Good morning and welcome to a place that we will be exploring today, and it is a former POW camp dating back to World War II, and it's right here in the middle of the Phoenix metro area. So it is indeed a brisk morning for this walk and talk. We had rain last night here out in the desert, so all the animals are going to be nice and fresh and happy this morning. I thought about doing this video about my tattoo, my historical tattoo, and how it has aged over the years in my own mind. I thought about doing it as a live stream because it's kind of got that feel to it, right? But we're doing this recorded because I want to show you in detail, in high definition, what my historical tattoo looks like today, and we'll kind of talk about how I feel a little bit different about it now than I did many years ago in college when I first got it. So sit back and enjoy, and let's get into, first of all, where we are headed. So we're going down to the only remaining structure that is left from this once very large prisoner of war camp, again dating back to World War II, or it was called at that time Camp Papago. And I guess the whole setup here was one that was a little bit luxurious despite being out in this very hot desert. They treated the prisoners pretty well with the concept of they'll just want to stay, but as I showed you in one of the live streams, there was a major escape that took place from this place right here that we're walking through. It was the biggest escape from any U.S. prison, any prisoner of war camp here in the United States. And the marker we won't be able to see today, but we will see the last remaining structure, as well as one other little bit of the camp that still remains that we'll have to find. So this is a pretty typical scene out here in the desert, the way that these roads kind of do a little bit of a roller coaster up and down. Just a result, I guess, of the kind of the geography and the way the water flows and such, right? So the tattoo, which is kind of the mystery reveal of this video, is something I've been thinking a lot more about recently, as things are changing very quickly in our country with everything that's been going on. I've been thinking a lot more about that tattoo and its historical nature and how my view of it has changed. It was such a cool thing to do back at that time when tattoos were just becoming acceptable for the average person to go out and get one. So prior to that time, prior to when I had my tattoo done, they were thought of very differently than they are nowadays, right? So Popeye the Sailor Man, for example, that was the kind of person who would have a tattoo, or maybe from a biker gang or something like that. But nowadays, seen very differently. You'll even sometimes, in some places, you see police officers who have visible tattoos on their arms, right? That would have been completely out of the question not that long ago. So thinking a lot about how things change and how fast things change, especially here in the American culture, the popular culture that sort of drives a lot of change in our society. And this tattoo has been kind of coming to mind a lot, especially recently. So I do see this one remaining structure coming into view now over here, and we'll get you a closer look at it. So my understanding, and again with history it's a little hard to know, as Hunter Thompson once said, because you'll get a little different versions of it. That's just part of the discipline of history, is that You are telling the story as best you can, but you're telling it from a specific angle, and sometimes things aren't always 100% certain. So I've heard some people say that this, or some sources say that this structure is a last remaining barrack building from the camp, but I think the better interpretation is that the structure you'll see here was used as the officers' quarters for the U.S. Army or U.S. military personnel or officers that worked at this camp, Camp Papago. So right there is a structure that even today still remains and even today is still in use. That's the old officers' quarters from Camp Papago, and it is nice to see after all these years that we can still actually not only have that kind of thing to go visit, but also still be using it on a daily basis. It is now the Elks Club. So, as I mentioned, this whole area here, especially off in this direction, was just a massive POW camp, right? And mainly it was German Navy prisoners of war. They had a number of U-boat captains who were kept at this camp, for example. So where was I going with this whole tattoo thing, as we'll walk back up in this direction and find the other remnant? So a friend of mine living there in the dorm with me came up with this idea, and so it wasn't a spur of the moment out at the bar kind of situation. It was something where I had several days to prepare, even a week, to try to figure out what am I going to have permanently attached to me for the rest of my life that I'll always have to live with from that point on. I mean, I knew it was a big decision at the time, but now, of course, I appreciate it as even a much more significant or impactful decision than even that I knew at the time. So I had time, right, to think about this, and I was looking through different books because that was still a pretty main source of information, was library books. And so I found my tattoo in a book. I'll give you that much of a clue for now. And I'll also say it is not a person. Luckily, we don't have to talk about me having a Richard Nixon tattoo or something like that. So I found the tattoo I wanted to do, and my friend assured me that the tattoo artist that he found, which was about 3 hours down the highway, was very good with artistic tattoos, and that's why he'd chosen this particular woman that we went to see. And when we got there, it was kind of a weird setup because it was just her house. And so we went into her house. We're just sitting in her living room, and it kind of had this air about it of almost like a fortune teller or a psychic or something like that, which I thought was pretty cool, honestly. I like that kind of unusual stuff. So anyways, it was decided that I would go first because my tattoo was more artistically rigorous or challenging and that kind of thing. So what I remember of it, in case you've never had a tattoo before, I remember initially it just being kind of a intense tickling kind of feeling, not a big deal, right? Just a little bit of a maybe irritating the nerves a little bit, but it was over time as this process continued that that's when the pain really set in. And it was, I remember it being very, very painful by the time that she was done. And then she just sort of wrapped it up in like a clear cellophane like a plastic wrap that you use in the kitchen. And I remember it was just under the wrap, it was just kind of all moist and full of liquid, so that was kind of weird and unexpected. Perhaps the biggest surprise of the whole process was how much liquid a person loses after being poked so many thousands of times. So we've got kind of an interesting view off in this direction, right? That's the view that not only the prisoners would have had, but also the guards that were working out here in their towers, right? And we're gonna head off into a little bit more bushy area here, see if we can find the last remnant out here of that camp. And we shall go right here. So that's what it's like to get a tattoo if you've never had one. It is quite painful, and my friend who was there with me was, I would say, that was much more painful because his was right in the middle of his top of his back, right over the bony area of the spine, and that did not look like much fun. Getting a tattoo over like a area where there's a lot of very little skin there before you get to bone, right? So looks like the animals have been busy out here. Some fresh digging going on. And I have never actually specifically looked for the last remnant that's right in this area, so we'll be keeping an eye out. And then after that, we will do the big reveal and see if you came close to guessing. Anyways, I don't know, do you watch much history stuff? I mean, it might surprise people to learn that I tend to view this channel first and foremost kind of as a history kind of channel. Even though I like to do a lot of stuff that's sort of kind of just related to it, but even just things like the UFO stuff that I've done, I tend to think of that as a kind of history that probably normal historians wouldn't even ever touch. But so maybe I'll give you some of my background. So I do have a master's degree in history, so I didn't go all the way to the PhD level. It was just I was getting a little bit burned out on the amount of reading and writing just day and night. Once you're at that kind of master's to PhD level, it's not much fun anymore. You don't really go out and get tattoos. You basically spend your entire days really intensely getting into history. And so while I really enjoyed it, I did stop at that kind of mid-level there, master's degree, and I guess what I found, and this is part of my reflection on the tattoo, is I really think, or I've found now, that there aren't many people who really are into history, which has always kind of surprised me, because I guess it's one of those things where it's like, maybe you've seen that Saturday Night Live skit from back when Mike Myers would do the Scottish guy, and he was this Scottish guy who had a store where they only sold Scottish stuff. And he was so into that, like that was his thing. And of course he believed that everybody else has to be into Scottish stuff as much as he is. So you see these stores out there where you can kind of say to yourself, that's that person who's really into something, and they don't understand that other people just aren't that into it, right? And that's kind of what I'm discovering about history and about some of the topics that I cover on the channel, is that while I think it's awesome to go out here and look at old POW remnants and stuff, you have to be kind of a special type of person to be interested in seeing that and watching that and clicking on it, right? So I'm just now starting to come to this realization that I'm a pretty rare I have a pretty rare interest in obscure history type stuff. And so here we are, right? A very picturesque baseball field. Let's step out here just briefly and try to get the sun at the right angle, right? So lots of setup taking place right now. All right, let's get this camp remnant back on the radar here and do a little hunting around. It seems as though they might be doing some construction or something out here, or they maybe just use this area as kind of like a place to dump and park random items. So this is something that, yeah, it's not picturesque, right? But it's really how the world looks. And so I always try to show that without sanitizing the images of our world. I do see what we're looking for. That's the 4 little pilings or pylons, whatever the word is. And it's the last remnants of one of the guard towers that was out here at the camp. And still got a little bit of steel sticking up out of there. You can see that somebody's probably done some work on these to try to preserve them, even though it's just out here in the bushes. But you can see this is some probably not, probably somewhat new, and then maybe they've wrapped the whole thing at some point in metal. I don't know if that metal was there during the World War II days or not, but you can see how this metal has been torn away a little bit. So it's like it's gotten torn off of there, and tons of aggregate in that cement down there. So maybe they didn't do the best job with mixing their cement, but that's it. I mean, that's the only other thing that I'm aware of out here at what was a huge camp that is still in existence today. So it's kind of a shame that we don't do a better job of preserving some of this stuff, but we still have that. You are now up on a stand. It's about as tall as I am, and the time has come, right? So let's take a look at this tattoo that has been a little bit in my mind recently. And there you have it. It's known as a lion rampant, a rampant lion, and that is the rampant position. So there's many different positions that lion takes in the heraldry stuff going way back to the Middle Ages, right? So earlier than most of my interests, but I found it in a book, right? And I thought it was kind of interesting, and how there's so much stuff around just these lions and the different poses and stuff that they're doing. And it used to have some red even in the claws, which I think has been lost to time, but you might see a little bit of red still in the tongue. And yeah, it's faded. It's from a past time that I've been thinking a lot about, right? Because here we are, things are changing very, very quickly in 2025, and this just reminds me of a past time when change was much more paced. It was something where we had a better idea of where we were going. It was something that it was a simpler time, a much more stable time when this baby first went onto my arm. And it's just interesting to think back to that and how quickly things have changed in just the years that this lion has been living on my arm. So that's it's fun to think about, and I hope that whether you are a long-term supporter and viewer of the channel, or whether you found this video for the first time and it's your first time here, we hope to see everybody back again for the next one, and I hope that you'll consider subscribing if you haven't already. So until our next adventure, I'll say goodbye from a former prisoner of war camp, and today known as Papago Park.